Well, this is my rack. No, not this one. This was a case that was actually thrown out by a customer at the data center I used to work at. The top two servers, the KVM, um, actually the network switch, the power distribution unit, and the battery backup were all pitched by customers. And actually, come to think of it, the HP Workgroup printer was also pitched by a customer. Now, the reason they pitched them is because this one and this one are both uh, Hewlett Packard DL360 Gen 7. And for high end computing, yeah, that's kind of getting a little bit on the aged side. Um, but as far as home lab, personal use, things like that, they are fantastic. Um, this one here, sorry, I didn't mean to flip you off. This one here is actually running pfSense current version 2.6, and it is um, currently set up as firewall, router, VPN server, um, monitors the battery backup so that it can properly shut down if needed. This one here is running TrueNAS uh, Core, I believe it is. I don't think I put scale on it. Yeah, Core. And it is the current version, but I am not currently using this one. I built another lower power consumption server. My requirements for files, I mean, it's only me in the condo. I'm the only one who uses any of this, really. You know, my daughter kind of makes use of this, but only because she uses the internet. Um, but anyway, that's not currently being used. I was going to install Microsoft Hyper-V Server 2019, the last of the free versions of that, because I wanted to mess around with Hyper-V, obviously. Problem is, it requires UEFI boot, and this server apparently doesn't support that. I haven't looked into it very much. I just tried to boot it off the thumb drive, and it says, hey, it doesn't support UEFI boot. So I kind of stopped there. This is a DL360 Gen 8, and it is currently running VMware 7. I've got a Windows 2022 VM on it, a Windows 10 Professional VM, and an Ubuntu Linux 2204 VM running on it. And if you don't like how I say Ubuntu and you want me to say Ubuntu or Ubuntu, or I don't care. Um, my patch panel I got off of Amazon. It currently has pretty much anything on the network is plugged into it. The way that this particular one is set up, all of the, let's see, I can use this one to examine because nothing's on right now. And this is one of the ones that is a patch, um, but it's got the RJ45 on both sides, so you don't actually have to punch down. Makes it nice and easy. You can use standard patch cables on the other side of it, and you can swap things out nice and easy, move things around anytime you want to. No rewiring necessary. They are fantastic. When I first saw them being used by a customer at the data center, I thought, holy smokes, that's like really lazy. I mean, you can't be bothered to punch it down. Well, got to thinking about it. Like, man, there's a lot of advantages to that. Now, if you still want to punch down, no problem, you can do that. I've got one of the old punch down type patch panels sitting over on the other rack, um, not even mounted because I don't use it. This is an HP managed switch. It supports VLANs, but that's about really it. I mean, it's one of the earlier ones. The customer that got rid of this put in an Aruba PoE switch because they have PoE cameras and they wanted to eliminate, was it 8 PoE injectors, I believe they had. Um, so it also has um, fiber capability. There's no fiber currently in it. I've got it some on the patch panel because I have future plans. These are also the same type of plugs. Let's see if I can find the other ones. The same type in that they are on both sides of them. You just plug in a patch cable, and that way you don't have to try to terminate fiber. And I don't have the equipment, and quite honestly, don't have the expertise to terminate fiber. That's not something that I do, so not actually even a skill that I'm wanting to learn because I just flat don't need it. Anyway, I have a standard 5-port gigabit switch upstairs on the second floor. This is all down in the basement, but I have the switch patched into here, and then my equipment in my home office is upstairs, all running through that switch, and one RJ, or not RJ, I'm sorry, Cat 6 cable, and comes down to the switch, and we're all good. That's where my other Windows 2022 server is, which I plan on doing a video on later on how I did it. But that's also where my file server is, on an old workstation that actually somebody sent to be recycled, and I recycled it. I recycled it into an Open Media Vault file server with a 120 gig SSD for the OS, which I'm not really happy about because I really wanted to have a mirror on the OS drive, but it's not that big of a deal. So I went ahead and just went with a single drive. And then I've got two 2 terabyte drives. I didn't bother going with the red NAS drives because I'm one guy. It's not going to be constantly written to, so I'm really not worried about the wear and tear. But currently I don't have any VLANs set up on here because I just really don't need them. I'm not worried about trying to put the Wi-Fi and all of the IoT devices on a separate VLAN and segregate it from my network. And I have almost nobody joining my wireless except for um, my daughter, and she uses a Chromebook and her phone. I'm really not worried about my daughter hacking me, and I'm not worried about somebody hacking her to get into my network. And if they do, well, you know what? Have a lot of fun. There's really nothing of any great importance on my network. This PDU has 5 plugs on the front, 6 on the back. Um, all of the ones on the back are currently populated. And I wanted one that actually had all of the plugs on the back, but since a customer tossed this out and there was absolutely nothing wrong with it, I'll make do. I'm not sure. Actually, let me look and see if that's even in the shot. kind of. But I've got a, let's see, I'll go like this, a Dell workstation. It's another one that was to be recycled. Um, and I went ahead and recycled it because it actually has hardware that is perfectly fine for what I want to do. While this is my pfSense router, I wanted to have a backup in case something goes wrong. So I loaded pfSense onto the Dell and went ahead and took a backup of the configuration off of this, loaded it onto this, and the only thing that you actually have to do after you do that is you have to reassign what the network interfaces are, because obviously they're not going to be the same from an enterprise rack mount server to a Dell workstation that has a spare PCIe gigabit NIC added onto the onboard one. So I loaded the configuration on and told it, okay, use this one for the WAN, this one for the LAN, done. So if anything happens to this one where it goes belly up, then all I have to do is move the cables from here down into this Dell and turn it on, and all of a sudden I'm routing again. We'll have to go to my router. I've got AT&T Fiber, and the device that they provided I'm not real impressed with, because instead of having an actual bridge mode, it has a mode where you say, okay, this MAC address, I want to use this MAC address and pass the public IP on to this address. Frequently, I have to reboot the device 2 or 3 times to get it to actually get that address and then communicate with the modem. It'll get the address every time, but 2 times out of 3, when it comes up and gets the address, it won't actually route any traffic. And I've done a lot of testing. I've annoyed the daylights out of AT&T because I called them and I had to get 3 different devices before one actually performed that function properly. And of course they wanted to blame my device, and I tested and tested and tested, and yeah, it's not my device, it's their device. So it finally works. So the only time I have any issues with it is when the power goes out, and I intend to get a battery backup specifically for that device, so I don't have as many issues, because when the power goes out here, it either goes out for less than a minute or it goes out for most of the day. If a transformer blows, if a drunk driver runs into a phone pole. I use those as examples because those have both happened in the last year. But anyway, that's, oh, and of course we have the HP KVM, and I know this probably isn't going to be in the shot. Let me see if I can move this. Yeah, it's in the shot enough, but another thing that the same data center client that threw out this server, they also threw this out because they stopped using a physical KVM and they just go in to the ILO interfaces on the HP servers and do their management that way. They also have what they call the crash cart that has a keyboard, video, and mouse that they can move around into the different rows of servers and be able to do whatever they need without having to worry about having one of these on every rack. And that worked out quite well for me. It's only a single channel, so you can't have all 3 of them hooked up and then just push a button for which one you want. But I don't mind I mean, basically you move a USB cable and a video cable and you're done. Quite a handy little device though, I gotta say. Now, I also have a fair amount. Move this on the tripod. There's the HP server. Or, that's not a server, that's a printer. Good Lord. But that was pitched because the client said that it was too noisy, and it prints wonderfully and isn't any more noisy than any other of the common LaserJet Pros. So, free printer. Now I also have quite a few spare parts. Let's see. Oh, old USB printer cable. But I have lots of heavy-duty power cables, standard power cables, and I have other ones that are very specific to. They have these for connectors because these connect to the high-end 30 amp PDUs, of which this server rack, the legs of the tripod won't move so I can't show you, but it had two 30 amp PDUs when I got it, because it of course was in a data center, and 30 amp, that's the plugs they get, so that's what they were using. I've got a bunch of blank, these came out of the Gen 8 server, and even though the Gen 8 server was supposed to come with 8 300 gig drives, it instead came with 3 900 gig drives. And for what I wanted to do, well, I wanted the 300, so I left 2 of the 900s in for the OS. They got included in the data store, so I can still use that space. And then I've got 6 300 gigs that I put in, and that's what the VMs are all on. But I've got the vendor that I bought the server from. I only paid like $300 for the server, but he went ahead, because of the difference in configuration, he said, well, you'll have to get the hard drives, but I'll send you spare drive trays. So he did, and I got 6 spare drive trays. I'm pretty happy about that. I have a spare fan module because my fans were running way high, and these were inexpensive enough that I figured, well, I'm going to see if it's the fans themselves or if it's some other issue, and it turned out it was the motherboard. But now I have spare fans for both of the Gen 7 servers. I also have a couple of spare 300 gig 10,000 RPM SAS drives that I can swap in if need be on the Gen 7 server. This is the other 900, so that I can swap that in if one of the OS drives goes out, and if one of the 300 gig data drives goes out, then I'll either take one of these spares or the carriage off of the bad drive, and then put one of these 300 gig in there and be able to use that and not have to order anything else. So that's kind of handy. Got my spare okay, I'm gonna have to shorten these legs. Hang on a second here. There, now I can move this around. Okay, so those are the spare sockets for these, so that I can put in more. I've got, these are empties, and then in these I went ahead and just put the blanks, but that's the rest of the bag for those. And then I also as you can probably see from looking at the switch, I have 6-inch RJ45 cables that I use, because if you have a 24-port patch panel, they just work really, really well. They keep everything nice and tidy. I intend, if I expand the network out, I intend to get some 1-foot ones so that they can reach these farther away ports. But for now, those work fantastic. The other nice thing, if you get one of these patch panels like this, and you have a 48-port switch, you put one of these 1U patch panels on the top of it, one on the bottom of it, and since these ports go all the way across, and then the 48 ports, these would go all the way across, you could patch the stuff from the upper patch panel into the top row, the bottom patch panel into the bottom row, and since it has the plug on both sides of the patch port, instead of being punched down, you can move them around pretty much any way you want to, anytime you want to, quite easily. Done that for a couple of customers now, and it looks fantastic, nice and neat, very easy to work with. Highly recommend it. Oh, and since my camera goes down kind of now, on the bottom you can see I've got an APC rack mount UPS. It's only a 450, but since the enclosure was being tossed because they were getting a bigger one, and there's nothing wrong with it, well, I went ahead and kept it. Kept it and use it. We've got that. Then we've got the computers here. That one I bought refurbished on Amazon, and that's just a workstation that the kids are able to use. That was another please recycle this from a client, and it was good enough that I just wiped it, reinstalled Windows 10, and it actually almost immediately told me, hey, you can have Windows 11. So, you know, now it's got Windows 11 on it. You can probably see from here, right there, that is one of the 30 amp PDUs that I pulled out of the rack. Actually, there were 2 of those, and it had one that's mounted inside along the side of the rack, and yeah, I don't think I've ever even plugged anything into it. But other than that, there's the fiber ones, there's some more of the blanks, various bits and bobs and pieces, parts. And oh, probably wondering why I have bread ties sitting here. Well, they always, okay, not always, they usually have these markings on the side of them that says, hey, you, there we go, you know, with expiration dates and all that kind of stuff on it. Well, if you turn them over, they're very easy to write on, and if you decide that you're going to write on it, you can do what I frequently do, and you can write like WAN, and this is very clearly marked as the WAN port. It can be moved from cable to cable if you need to replace the cables. It can be moved out of the way if need be, whatever the case may be, and you can label the daylights out of cables, and if you just ask your friends to save those for you, it's free, because it comes on bread, buns, and I've got way too much stuff around here, and this tripod leg are hitting everything. But anyway, that's my network, or at least as much as I want to show of it right now, and I'm pretty happy with it. It sits down here whirring away in the basement and doesn't get obnoxious. Does everything that I need it to do, and I have probably about $400 invested in the entire thing. Not too awful bad. Have a great day.